name's Jan Radu. I'm from stampingelegance.com. Thanks for joining me today on my YouTube channel. I am a Stampin' Up demonstrator based in Perth in Western Australia, and I'm bringing a card tutorial to you today. You'll see I am wearing a blue fingernail today for Mental Health Awareness in October. And this is the card we're going to be making today. So as you can see, I'm using the Feels Like Frost Designer Series paper, and we're going to be using another few products today. The first being the Itty Bitty stamp set Itty Bitty Christmas from Stampin' Up, and I really love the happy Christmas sentiment in this stamp set. I'll be using the Tasteful Textures embossing folder. That's a 3D embossing folder, and the Tasteful Labels dies as well. From the Sweetest Time bundle, I'll be using this little leaf from the Sweetest Border dies. And we'll use some adhesive backed snowflakes for an embellishment. So bringing in my card base, we're using Seaside Spray today, and I'll be using my Simply Scoring tool just to score that in half. So this card is cut at half of an A4 and then scored at 10.5. I'll have all my measurements will be on the blog, my blog post, so you can jump over there to stampingelegance.com if you want the details of today's card. When I'm using my bone folder to burnish the crease of the card, I really like to push it up against the guide on the Simply Scored there. And I've got a panel of Whisper White, which is cut to 10 centimeters by 14.3, so that's half a centimeter smaller than my card base. And when I'm using a 3D embossing folder, I like to just spritz a couple of shots of water onto the cardstock. And this does a few things. Firstly, it creates, I think, a deeper impression, but it also just reduces any cracking that you might see in your cardstock when you're pushing it through your die cutting or embossing machine. So you can see all that lovely texture there. This is a great embossing folder for just general use. It just suits absolutely every occasion. Now I'm just bringing in a Stampin' Up delivery box. You can use any kind of cardboard box obviously for this. This just catches all of the spray. So I have mixed up in a misting bottle. I've got a few drops of the shimmer paint in Frost White, and I have a base of rubbing alcohol. I just get that from Woolworths, and just a few drops of Night of Navy re-inker, which sounds dark, but as you can see, when it sprays, it really lightens to really lovely purpley blue, which I thought really suited the colour scheme I've got going here today. I bring my heat tool in and just dry that off, because the alcohol, even though it evaporates quite quickly, it can just leave your cardstock a little damp. So I just speed it along by drying that with my heat tool. And I use the reverse side too, just to try and reduce any warping. And once that's dried off, I just pop it under a nice big clear block, and that usually flattens it out quite nicely. Now bringing in the Tasteful Label dies, this is a great die set. It's not really a stacking die set, it's more a coordinating die set. So you'll see I'm using 3 different shapes here today. They all emboss with a slightly different finish. So these ones have like a bit of an embossed lined border around the edge, and then the banner is more of a stitched edge. And they layer really nicely. So just bringing in my sheet of Feels Like Frost 6x6 now. And I'm just going to choose my shape to try and keep as much of this floral in the label as possible. So just position it so that I'm keeping those flowers in the die cut there. You can angle it however you like. If you want a more subtle look, you can always use the top of the paper. That's a really nice subtle look there. And I'll run that through my die cutting machine. And you'll see here what I mean by the slightly embossed line around the edge of the die cut. Turning the paper over, I'm using this gorgeous coordinated silver side just for the long label. This die is a great shape for so many sentiments. I'm using it as a layering piece on today's card, but it really does seem to fit in so many sentiments across just a multitude of stamp sets. It's a really useful die set to have. For the sentiment banner, I'm using a couple of strips of DSP here. You'll see it's a really nice soft look. Some of the sheets have this nice subtle look towards the top. I thought it'd be fun to put the sentiment on there instead of the traditional whisper white that I would normally use. And today I'll be stamping with the Itty Bitty Christmas stamp set. There is an absolute ton of sentiments that you could use in here, but I've picked Happy Christmas. This is a really great stamp set to have. Finishes off a lot of those image type stamp sets that you might have that just need that variety of sentiments to go on top. The block I'm using today is from one of the Stampin' Up kits. It's a really useful size. And I have an old style ink pad of Night of Navy. I haven't quite gotten around to replacing all of my ink pads into the soft foam yet, but I will get there eventually. These work just fine. Probably could do with a bit of a re-inking. Usually when I'm stamping sentiments like this, I'll do it a couple of times. Sometimes there's one that's slightly better impression than the other. And then I'll run that through my die cutting machine with the stitched banner. So now we have all of our pieces cut out. You can see that stitched banner there. And I'm just going to take the small leaf part from the Sweet Borders die and I'll run that through a couple of times to give me some little accent pieces. And now I'm just going to go through and assemble my card. I'm adding tear and tape to my embossed panel. I find that gives a nice strong stick, using my Take Your Pick tool to peel off those backings. And I'll add that panel to my Seaside Spray card base. Next I'm just bringing in some dimensionals and I'll layer up the first largest label there, as well as my banner. And just popping this larger piece down just off to the side. I'm bringing in my Tombow Multi liquid glue and I'm just going to liquid glue this section of the label. This one's going to be down flat and I'll just avoid putting glue on the end there so that I can hang it off that largest label. I'm just hanging it off to the side there. Liquid glue is great in this instance because you've got a little bit of wiggle room and you can make sure that that's down nice and straight. I'm just going to use my grid lines. Try and get a visual to make sure I've lined that up. And then we'll bring the sentiment banner in and I'm going to hang that slightly off the side of that silver label also. You can get some really nice effects by stacking these in different ways. You don't always have to stack them dead center in the middle. They do look nice that way, but I quite liked the effect here. And I'm just going to use that liquid glue again just to attach the two little sprigs. I just like to put the tiny little dots here, there, and once you press it down, this is a great adhesive. It really does dry nice and firm. Just adding the second one in there, just using the lightest hand with that adhesive. Pressing those down nice and firm. And the card's coming together now. We just have a few little embellishments to add. These are great, these self-adhesive snowflakes. You don't have to worry about the glue. You get two sheets, one's a little more pink, this one's a little more green and blue. I find if you line it up on top of your project, you can pick and choose which ones match the best. And I'm going for the more bluey ones here today. Take Your Pick tool really makes it an easy job just to lift them off and pop them down where you want them. And that's the finished card for today. I hope you enjoyed this project. I'd love you to subscribe to my channel so you receive notifications for any new videos, and I'd love to see you soon.